Emily Harper vanished without a trace, while her husband, Mark Harper, was found dead in their locked home. What dark secret did Mark take with him to the grave? And where was Emily hiding all this time? This is the chilling story that no one saw coming. Emily Harper was the kind of woman people trusted, without question. Living in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, her life seemed ordinary, almost too ordinary to stir suspicion. She had a steady job at a local bookstore and was known to be friendly, always smiling at neighbors during morning walks or community events. Her marriage to Mark Harper was viewed as stable, if not perfect, just a couple quietly building a life together. No one expected the calm to shatter so abruptly. The day Emily disappeared began like any other. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of their modest home, casting gentle light on the kitchen where Emily prepared breakfast. Her movements were habitual: pouring coffee, slicing fruit, organizing mail. She was humming softly, as if nothing in the world could disturb her peace. Mark left for work with a brief kiss on her cheek, and Emily waved him goodbye, her eyes warm with routine comfort. It was the kind of morning that makes you feel safe, that things are as they always have been. But by evening, everything would be unrecognizable. As the hours passed, Emily did not return home from her afternoon errands. She was supposed to pick up groceries, stop by the dry cleaner, then return to prepare dinner. None of these tasks were completed, and her absence quickly became a source of growing alarm. Mark, at first, called her several times, leaving anxious messages when she didn't answer. Friends and family tried reaching out, but Emily's phone went straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. Neighbors noticed unusual silence that night. The soft glow from the Harper house windows stayed off longer than usual, and no cars came or went. A few curious neighbors peeked out from their porches, sensing the stillness but unsure if it was cause for concern. The next morning, Mark reported Emily missing, his voice shaky but controlled. He described the day's timeline as best he could, his mind racing to fill in gaps he couldn't explain. Police arrived promptly, launching a thorough search of the neighborhood and the Harper home. Officers checked every room, every closet, but found no sign of struggle or forced entry. Emily's belongings were left untouched. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter, her keys were in the bowl by the door, and her car remained parked in the driveway. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The absence of evidence only deepened the mystery. The community was shaken. Emily's disappearance became the topic of hushed conversations in grocery stores, schools, and workplaces. People wondered if something sinister had occurred, yet no concrete leads emerged. Surveillance footage from nearby cameras showed Emily leaving her house that morning but never returning. The footage captured her walking calmly, without haste or fear. Nothing suggested she was being followed or forced away. As days stretched into a week, hope began to wane. Search parties were organized, flyers plastered on street corners, and the local news covered the case extensively. Mark appeared at every press conference, pleading for information and updates. Yet the police remained tight-lipped, their investigation mired in frustrating uncertainty. Several theories circulated. Some speculated Emily might have planned to leave Mark, staging her disappearance to escape an unhappy marriage. Others feared she had fallen victim to a stranger, abducted under cruel circumstances. The truth was elusive, locked behind a veil of silence that no one could penetrate. The absence of physical evidence or a clear motive made every assumption fragile. Throughout this time, Mark's behavior attracted quiet scrutiny. Though visibly distraught, some noticed moments of unusual calmness that didn't quite fit with the agony of a missing spouse. Friends described him as cooperative but withdrawn, avoiding social gatherings and retreating into himself. Investigators questioned him multiple times, searching for inconsistencies or clues, but Mark insisted he had no answers. The police expanded their search beyond the neighborhood, checking hospitals, shelters, and distant towns. Emily's phone records and bank accounts showed no unusual activity, deepening the enigma. Every day without new information felt like a step further into darkness. As the investigation deepened, strange details began to emerge. Small things that seemed insignificant alone, but together painted a puzzling picture. Emily's journal, found tucked away in a drawer, contained cryptic entries about feeling watched and anxious. Emails revealed no signs of conflict, but hinted at a growing tension in her personal life. It was as if Emily sensed something wrong, but could not explain it. The first chapter of this grim story ended with no answers, only questions that haunted those left behind. Emily Harper was missing, and the world around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a revelation that never came. The peaceful neighborhood had transformed into a place of shadows, where the familiar had become frightening, and the line between victim and suspect blurred into mystery. 2 days after Emily Harper's disappearance, the quiet suburban calm was shattered again, but this time with a darker, more disturbing discovery. Mark Harper, her husband, was found dead in the basement of their home. The initial scene suggested suicide, a single gunshot wound to the head, a pistol resting near his hand, and no signs of a struggle. The police arrived quickly after a neighbor, concerned by the silence and lack of activity at the Harper residence, called them. At first glance, the scene seemed straightforward, tragic, but simple. Mark Harper, overwhelmed by his wife's sudden vanishing, had taken his own life. But as investigators began their work, subtle details raised uneasy questions. The basement was dimly lit and unusually tidy for a place where someone might die in desperation. Everything appeared almost too deliberate, as if the scene had been arranged to send a message or hide something else beneath the surface. Mark's body was found seated on a folding chair, his posture too composed to be a spontaneous act of despair. His expression, captured by the forensic photographer, showed an unsettling calm, as though the man had resigned himself to an unknown fate rather than acted impulsively. Detectives noted the absence of a suicide note, which was uncommon in such cases. People who take their lives often leave behind words, clues, or explanations, letters to loved ones, confessions, or apologies. But here, nothing. No indication of motive or farewell. This silence deepened the mystery. If Mark had indeed taken his own life, why had he chosen to remain silent about his pain? And more troubling, why had Emily disappeared just days before? The timing was too precise to be coincidence. Forensic teams carefully searched the basement, scrutinizing every inch. They found no signs of forced entry or a struggle, but there were strange marks on the walls, faint scratches, and dark stains that puzzled the investigators. The floor was clean, almost unnervingly so, as if someone had recently scrubbed away evidence. The gun itself was examined closely, its fingerprints wiped clean except for Mark's. Ballistics confirmed that the bullet matched the pistol, but the angle of the shot was unusual, raising questions about the mechanics of the act. As news of Mark's death spread, the media frenzy began. Reporters flooded the neighborhood, speculating wildly. Was this a murder disguised as a suicide? Did Mark kill Emily before ending his own life? The public thirsted for answers, but the police maintained a careful silence, unwilling to release details that might jeopardize the investigation. Behind the scenes, the officers were digging deeper into Mark's past, his relationships, and his recent behavior. One investigator recalled that Mark had appeared visibly strained in recent months, though no one knew the full extent of his troubles. He had been more withdrawn, canceling plans and avoiding contact with friends, yet no one imagined his troubles could be connected to a disappearance or a death. To those who knew him, Mark was an average man struggling to cope, not someone capable of something sinister. However, as the hours passed, inconsistencies emerged. The autopsy revealed something unexpected: traces of a rare poison in Mark's bloodstream. The poison's presence contradicted the idea of a simple suicide. It suggested foul play, or at least a more complex scenario. Had Mark been forced to ingest the poison before shooting himself, or was he trying to end his life, slowly, in agony, before the final shot. The questions multiplied. Further investigation into Mark's personal effects revealed encrypted files on his computer and phone. Specialists worked to unlock them, suspecting they might contain clues to his state of mind or the secret behind Emily's disappearance. Some of the files included strange codes, disturbing images, and notes that hinted at a troubled psyche wrestling with unknown fears. The digital trail led nowhere straightforward, only deepening the enigma. Police also found a diary belonging to Mark. Its pages described obsession, paranoia, and a desperate need to protect something precious, though what exactly remained vague. He wrote of shadows closing in and secrets buried too deep to surface. These phrases painted a picture of a man tormented by invisible threats, possibly related to his marriage or hidden aspects of his life. The diary was incomplete, with many pages torn out or blacked over, as if Mark had tried to hide his own story even from himself. Neighbors described a silence at the Harper house that felt oppressive, like the air itself was heavy with secrets. The house, once a warm home, now seemed like a tomb guarding a mystery too dark to reveal. The unanswered question of where Emily was, combined with the chilling circumstances of Mark's death, left investigators grasping at fragments. At this point, the case had transformed from a simple missing person to a tangled web of death, secrets, and unexplained horrors. Mark Harper's death was no longer seen as an isolated tragedy, but a grim piece of a larger puzzle. What gruesome secret had he taken to the grave? What link did his demise have to Emily's disappearance? These questions hung heavily over the investigation, promising that the truth, when it emerged, would be far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. The discovery of the hidden room was a turning point in the investigation, was put in the secret by one Stacy Harper, a law enforcement colleague, friend, and camper, by the way, around the world, that sent shockwaves through the police force and everyone following the case. The Harper house, which had once seemed like an ordinary suburban home, was now revealed to be a vault of dark secrets, carefully concealed behind a simple book. It was a detective's intuition, combined with the frustration of dead ends, that led to a more detailed search of the basement. The bookshelf was heavy and old, and with a sharp push it swung open like a door, revealing a narrow passage leading into a small chamber. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of damp wood and something metallic. What lay beyond was a scene that could only be described as chilling. The hidden room was cluttered with strange objects, jars filled with murky liquids, some with unidentifiable floating objects inside, others sealed tightly with wax. Old photographs were scattered across a dusty table. Many showed Emily, but not in the happy moments neighbors remembered. In these images, her eyes were wide with fear, her posture tense and defensive. There were several pictures of her alone, some partially obscured by shadows, as if someone had been watching her closely. The photos seemed to capture moments of distress, times when she was being forced into uncomfortable situations. Among the more unsettling items were the cryptic notes scribbled in Mark's handwriting. The writing was erratic, sometimes barely legible, filled with strange symbols and phrases that didn't make immediate sense. One note repeated the phrase, "The key is in the silence," while another referenced the cage beneath. There were diagrams of the house, marking specific points with an almost obsessive attention to detail. It became clear that Mark had been living a double life, obsessed with secrets hidden right beneath his family's feet. The investigators brought in specialists to analyze the contents of the jars. Some were found to contain organic materials in advanced stages of decay, while others held substances that were toxic or rare chemicals not commonly found in homes. It raised more questions. What was Mark experimenting with? Had he been using these materials for something illegal? Or was it something far more sinister? The evidence suggested a disturbing obsession with control, decay, and possibly even life and death itself. One of the most puzzling discoveries was a makeshift journal hidden inside a locked box. Its pages were filled with detailed observations, notes on human behavior, and mentions of binding forces and eternal confinement. The tone was clinical yet disturbed, as if Mark had convinced himself he was working toward a higher purpose but was spiraling into madness. The journal contained chilling references to Emily, describing her as the subject, implying that she had been unwillingly involved in whatever secret experiments or rituals Mark was conducting. Officers also found audio recordings on a hidden digital device. The tapes captured moments of Mark talking to himself in low, anxious whispers. He spoke of protecting Emily, but his words were fragmented and confusing, switching rapidly between affection and threats. It was evident he struggled with his mental state, torn between love and something darker that consumed him. The recordings ended abruptly, suggesting they were made shortly before his death. The existence of the secret room altered the entire scope of the investigation. What had once seemed like a simple disappearance and suicide now looked like a deeply calculated and horrifying event. Mark's obsession with secrecy and control pointed toward a plan, one that might explain Emily's disappearance. It appeared she had not left voluntarily, but had been trapped in some way, perhaps even in this very house, hidden from the outside world. Investigators began searching the house more thoroughly for hidden compartments, air vents, or underground spaces connected to the room. The possibility that Emily was being held captive, alive but imprisoned, drove the search into every shadow. Specialists with equipment to detect human presence and sounds were called in, but nothing definitive was found. It was as if the house itself refused to reveal its secrets fully. The neighbors, once filled with sympathy for the Harpers, now looked at the house with suspicion and fear. Rumors swirled about strange noises, odd smells, and unexplained lights seen in the basement late at night. What had Mark been hiding from everyone, and what terrible fate had he planned for Emily? The questions hung heavy over the community, and the police knew they were racing against time. His discovery forced everyone to reconsider what they thought they knew. The calm suburban life was a facade, and behind closed doors lurked a dark obsession that led to a disappearance and a death. Mark Harper's hidden room was more than just a physical space. It was a symbol of secrets so gruesome and tightly kept that they threatened to consume anyone who dared uncover them. What lay in that secret chamber was a key piece of the puzzle, but whether it would lead to Emily, or only to more questions, was a terrifying uncertainty. The search for Emily intensified as days turned into weeks, but every lead seemed to dissolve into dead ends. The police had scoured the Harper home multiple times, investigating every hidden corner and possible escape route, yet there was no sign of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, swallowed whole by a mystery that refused to unravel. The town's unease grew alongside the grim headlines splashed across newspapers and television screens. The question that haunted everyone was no longer just where Emily was, but what had been involved in such dark, secretive activities. Detectives began to dig into the Harpers' past more deeply, looking for clues in their personal lives, social circles, and even digital footprints. Friends and family were interviewed repeatedly, but no one could provide meaningful insight. Emily had been described as kind and reserved, a woman who kept her troubles to herself. Mark, on the other hand, was painted as a man increasingly distant and secretive in recent months, but the reasons remained hidden. The encrypted files found on his devices were painstakingly decoded by experts, revealing cryptic references to rituals, old legends, and mentions of a dark pact, phrases that seemed more at home in horror stories than in real life. As the investigation broadened, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Mark's financial records showed unusual transactions, large cash withdrawals, purchases from obscure sources, and payments to unknown individuals. This suggested he was involved in something far beyond the scope of a normal family crisis. Detectives started to suspect that Mark's secret room and his strange experiments might be connected to a wider network, or even a cult. The symbols in his notes matched known occult signs, and some items in the hidden chamber resembled ritualistic tools. Further complicating the case, a local historian came forward with information about the house itself. The land on which the Harper residence was built had a dark past dating back over a century. It had once been the site of a small but notorious community known for practicing esoteric ceremonies and secret gatherings. Stories of disappearances and unexplained deaths were tied to the property, whispered among the oldest townsfolk. The historian's research suggested that the house's foundations might have been deliberately placed over an old underground crypt or chamber, possibly influencing Mark's fixation on the location. With this new context, the police sought help from experts in archaeology and paranormal studies. Using ground-penetrating radar, they scanned the property extensively, searching for any hidden spaces below the house or in the surrounding land. The scans revealed several anomalies, voids beneath the ground that had not been documented in the house's blueprints. These voids were potential tunnels or chambers long forgotten and possibly connected to the cage beneath that Mark had mentioned in his writings. A team of specialists began excavating cautiously, hoping to uncover where Emily might have been hidden or if any clues to her fate could be found underground. As they dug deeper, they discovered remnants of old wooden beams and stonework consistent with an ancient cellar or crypt. Inside, the air was thick with decay and something else, a faint metallic scent that hinted at rust or dried blood. Among the debris were fragments of old cloth and, chillingly, a piece of jewelry that matched one Emily was known to wear. The find reignited hope and horror in equal measure. Emily might have been trapped here, possibly alive at some point, but the conditions suggested she had been held in brutal confinement. The discovery also made it clear that Mark's actions had gone far beyond secret experiments. He had been part of something deeply rooted in the house's dark history, something that might have cost Emily her freedom and possibly her life. Meanwhile, detectives expanded their search beyond the property, following leads connected to Mark's financial transactions. One lead took them to a remote location several miles away, a secluded cabin owned by a man who appeared to be one of Mark's secret contacts. Inside the cabin, investigators found evidence of recent activity: burning candles, strange symbols painted on the walls, and a small altar covered with photographs and personal items belonging to Emily. The scene was unsettling, as if someone had been conducting rituals or trying to communicate with forces beyond the natural world. Despite the mounting evidence, no sign of Emily's body was found at the cabin, deepening the mystery. Had she escaped, or had Mark's associates hidden her somewhere else? Questions about who these people were and what role they played in the tragedy consumed the investigation. The authorities were now pursuing multiple angles: criminal, psychological, and supernatural, each more disturbing than the last. The community's fear turned into paranoia as rumors spread about the involvement of a secret society or cult operating in their midst. Families kept their doors locked, and some neighbors reported seeing strange figures near the Harper home at night. The once quiet street was now marked by suspicion and dread, with the house standing as a grim monument to a nightmare that no one fully understood. Throughout it all, Emily remained missing, and Mark's secret death continued to haunt everyone involved. The house, the hidden room, the underground chambers, and the strange artifacts all pointed to a dark world beyond ordinary comprehension. What terrible truth had Mark tried to keep hidden, and had Emily's disappearance been the price paid for uncovering it? With every new piece of evidence, the investigation became more urgent and more terrifying. The story of the missing wife and the dead husband was no longer just a tragedy, it was a puzzle soaked in darkness, promising revelations that would shake the town to its core and expose secrets that perhaps should have remained buried. As the investigation reached its most intense phase, the pieces of the puzzle began to slowly align, revealing a horrifying truth that no one had expected. The weeks of searching analyzing, and questioning had finally uncovered enough evidence to piece together what had truly happened to Emily and Mark. The story that emerged was darker and more twisted than anyone had imagined. A secret that Mark had taken to his grave, but which the relentless pursuit of justice was determined to bring into the light. The forensic team's analysis of Mark's body had initially shown no signs of foul play, leading to the assumption that he had taken his own life. However, further examination revealed subtle but crucial details, traces of a rare poison in his system, one that could induce delirium and paranoia long before death. This suggested that Mark's final days had been marked by suffering and confusion, possibly manipulated by someone or something beyond his control. The question became, who would want him dead, and why? Digging deeper into Mark's network of secret contacts uncovered a chilling web of connections. Among the people linked to him was a man named Adrian Locke, a figure shrouded in mystery and rumor. Adrian was known in obscure circles for dabbling in dark rituals and was rumored to have a hand in several unresolved disappearances across the region. His connection to Mark suggested that the husband's obsession with the occult and secret experiments had dragged him into dangerous territory. Surveillance footage from a gas station miles away from the Harper house showed Mark meeting with Adrian shortly before his death. Their conversation was brief but tense, and it was clear that Mark was desperate, possibly trying to break free from Adrian's influence. What transpired in that meeting was unknown, but it was the last confirmed sighting of Mark alive before his body was discovered. Investigators speculated that Mark had been coerced into participating in rituals that demanded sacrifices or obedience to some dark force. The hidden room, the jars, the notes, all pointed toward a twisted attempt to harness power through fear and control. Emily had likely been Mark's unwilling victim, trapped and tormented as part of these sinister rites. The absence of her body suggested she might have escaped or been hidden so well that she remained lost to the world. Then a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A local teenager who had been fascinated by the mystery had hacked into one of Mark's encrypted drives. Among the files was a video recording dated just days before Mark's death. The footage showed Mark alone in the secret room, speaking directly to the camera with a haunted expression. He confessed to his mistakes, his growing madness, and the terrible things he had done to Emily. His voice trembled as he begged for forgiveness and revealed that he had hidden Emily in a secret underground chamber beneath the property, a place designed to keep her safe from those who wanted to harm her, or perhaps to keep her prisoner forever. Mark's confession was a chilling mix of regret and mania. He spoke of a curse that had plagued his family for generations, a curse that led him to protect Emily at any cost, even if it meant imprisonment. He warned of a dark entity that demanded obedience and sacrifice, something he had tried to defy but ultimately failed. The video ended abruptly, cutting off, as if something or someone had forced him to stop recording. Armed with this new information, the investigators intensified their search beneath the Harper house. Using specialized equipment, they located a concealed trapdoor in the basement floor, cleverly hidden under old rugs and debris. The door led to a narrow, steep staircase descending into the earth. As officers cautiously made their way down, they found themselves in a small, damp chamber, barely large enough to contain a single person. Inside the chamber was Emily. She was alive, though weak and traumatized, her clothes torn and her body marked by neglect. The sight of her was both a relief and a heartbreak. She had endured unimaginable horrors in captivity. Her rescue sparked a wave of emotions. From hope and gratitude to anger and sorrow, she was rushed to a hospital for medical treatment and psychological care, where she slowly began to share her harrowing story. Emily's account was fragmented but devastating. She described how Mark's obsession had consumed him, how he had been manipulated by darker forces and menacing individuals, and how she had been trapped underground for weeks, with little light and almost no human contact. Despite his role in her imprisonment, she also spoke of moments when Mark had shown genuine remorse and desperation, torn between his love for her and the sinister influences controlling him. The town struggled to comprehend the nightmare that had unfolded behind the closed doors of the Harper home. The revelations shattered the illusion of safety and normalcy that had once existed. The case became a stark reminder of how darkness can hide in the most unexpected places, disguised by love and family. The questions about the occult, curses, and manipulation lingered, but the focus shifted toward healing and justice. Emily's survival was a victory, but it also raised new questions about the people who had drawn Mark into this nightmare. Investigations continued into Adrian Locke and others involved, with hopes of dismantling the sinister network that had ensnared the Harpers. The police vowed to bring those responsible to justice and ensure that no one else would suffer as Emily had. As the dust settled, the community faced a painful reckoning. The story of the missing wife and the dead husband was no longer just a mystery. It was a chilling tale of obsession, control, and survival. The truth Mark had taken to the grave had finally been uncovered, revealing horrors that challenged belief and tested the resilience of a woman who had been lost and found against all odds.